The fact is that farming is getting harder and harder, even as technology gets better and better. The underlying problem lies right under our feet: soil.
Countless country songs play out in America's farmland. Heartbreaks, bumper crops, humming tractors. Farmland is the heartland, holding a special place in Americana. And it's the people working the fields who know just how tough it is.
So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners. Somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk.
Despite all their work, farmers are finding it harder and harder to turn a profit. Scientists say most of America's farm soil is wrecked and lifeless. Farmers have to depend on herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers to get anything to grow. The USDA says now 97% of corn needs fertilizer. Back in 1964, that was 85%. And nitrogen, farmers used to have 58 pounds per acre in 1964. Today, 140 pounds. And that shift has serious consequences. Politico explains, dust blowing off degraded fields leads to respiratory illness in rural areas. Thousands of people are exposed to drinking water with levels of pesticides at levels the Environmental Protection Agency has deemed to be of concern. The drinking water of more than 210 million Americans is polluted with nitrate, a key fertilizer chemical that's been linked to developmental problems in children and poses cancer risk in adults. But a novel approach with roots in ancient farming just might be the solution. In essence, diversify to multiply. Experts found that tilling fields kills off millions of microorganisms that are essential to building healthy soil, which do everything from store water to provide nutrients for plants and pest control. The most recent numbers show that 60% of U.S. fields are tilled. Instead of that, scientists recommend 3 different things. They're pretty simple. Cover the ground with plants at all times. So, in between the rows of crops, don't leave plain dirt. Plant grass or vegetables in between to fill it in. Second, don't disturb the soil during growing season. And most importantly, rotate crops between seasons so the ground isn't trying to support the same plant year after year after year, which just drains the soil of crucial nutrients. If farmers start implementing these new/old techniques, experts say soil will hold more carbon, keeping it out of the environment, curbing climate change. On top of that, water runoff and all the chemicals it dumps into drinking water could be cut in half. The biggest obstacle, though, beyond old habits, is that the U.S. Farm Bill financially encourages the current practices. When September 2018 rolls around, we already know the bill needs reapproval, and lawmakers are considering incentivizing the healthier approach, leading to more vibrant, healthy American farms.
I spoke with Dr. Rob Meyers. He's a professor of plant sciences at the University of Missouri. Some of his research led to discoveries in that story, and they could improve the plants that we eat. Somehow he made soil a little more fascinating.
What are microorganisms and what do they do?
They're organisms that we can't see with our naked eye. You know, you need a microscope to see them. So we think of bacteria and antibacterial wipes, right, as bad things, but actually in the soil there's lots of good bacteria and also good fungi. And so those organisms, there could be 1 billion or more bacteria in a single tablespoon of soil. Those organisms are really helpful to keeping the soil ecosystem healthy, which helps grow our food.
Part of this study that you've been involved with also is one piece is cover crops.
Yes.
And you kind of feel like people are starting to get the message?
They are. You know, if you went back a decade ago, we had maybe just a couple million acres of cover crops. And by the way, cover crops are just plants we grow when things like corn and soybeans and wheat are not being grown. So these are things that help protect and improve the soil, such as from the fall to the spring when otherwise it might wash away. And they also, by growing, keep living roots in the soil that feed these organisms. So they're a big part of what we're learning about soil health is using these cover crops.
When I thought about it before, I would think you got to let them breathe, give them a break, give the land a little bit of time to recoup. And in fact, science is now saying it doesn't want time or space. It needs things in it.
Yeah, if we think about nature, whether it's a prairie or a forest, there's always living plants growing. I mean, they may go dormant during the winter, but there's living roots in the soil even in the wintertime. And so that's what the organisms expect and are used to. And when we end up with a plant that's only growing 4 months out of the year, like soybeans, then it's like a desert the other 8 months of the year, and those organisms start to die or go dormant. So we're learning we need to keep these living roots from cover crops growing and try to minimize our disturbance of the soil to keep this soil ecosystem healthy. and then get healthier plants as a result.
The Farm Bill is structured such that insurance companies are telling people, okay, I have to be able to prove that this is the same thing year after year,
Yes.
which in fact, as you just told us, is a really bad idea for many of these soils. What are you advising the government to do going forward and the lawmakers involved in this?
When we practice conservation, that improves the resiliency of our farming system. So when we have a bad weather year, instead of having to pay out billions of dollars in taxpayer payments, we can reduce those a little bit. It's kind of trying to build a more resilient farming system that can adapt to weather conditions, and that helps us with crop insurance going forward.
How does climate change play into all this? Climate change is obviously a big deal, and it seems to just be escalating in many ways and in many regions.
We think of long-term climate, what we're looking towards is, can we build more carbon in the soil through cover crops and reduce disturbance of the soil, and that then helps us with changing weather conditions going forward.